The bite should have condemned her. Instead, it became the one truth the Alpha King could not order silenced. Wren knelt in the frozen heart of the pack circle, stripped of her furs and left in the thin underdress she'd been wearing when they dragged her from her den. The stones beneath her knees held the cold of 100 winters, and the cold climbed into her bones and stayed there. Around her, torches burned against a black sky, their light throwing long shadows across the gathered pack. Wolves who had once called her Luna, now watching her the way they'd watch a carcass being dragged from the woods. Chapter 1. 3 nights had passed since they found Alpha Callum Ashgrove dead in his locked chambers, throat torn open, and Wren the only living thing in the room with him. She had not denied it. To the pack elders, that silence had been enough. Somewhere beyond the torchlight, a horn sounded low and long, the call that meant the Alpha King's convoy had reached the territory line. Wren did not lift her head. She had learned, in the years since her rejection, that a wolf who raised her chin in front of dominant wolves was a wolf inviting a challenge she could not survive. The great doors of the pack hall groaned open. Boots struck stone in a rhythm too even to belong to anyone uncertain of themselves. Alpha King Dorian Vane entered the way storms enter, without announcing himself, because nothing needed to announce itself when the air simply went still around it. He was broad through the shoulders, dark-haired, dressed in traveling leathers still dusted with the road, and his reputation walked in ahead of him. No wolf under his rule had ever been executed on a lie, and no wolf accused before him had ever walked free on a technicality. He did not forgive. He did not hesitate. He had already signed the order for her death before he crossed the territory line. Beside the dais, Beta Renner shifted his weight and would not meet her eyes. Matriarch Isolde, Callum's mother, sat in the front row, wrapped in mourning furs, her expression already settled into something close to satisfaction. Dorian stopped before the kneeling girl the pack had already convicted in every way but name, and the chamber went silent enough to hear the torches burn. "Look at me," he said, slowly, because she had learned that disobedience cost more than compliance ever did. Wren lifted her head. Chapter 2. Dorian Vane had not lost a challenge in 11 years of rule. He had not overturned a pack verdict in all that time either. Not once, not for mercy, not for politics, not for the quiet pressure of allies who wanted a debt repaid. Packs across the northern territories called him many things behind closed doors. Cold, exacting, a king who ruled with his wolf leashed so tightly that some doubted he still had one. But no one, not even his enemies, called him unjust. That was the reputation that had ridden into Ashgrove territory ahead of him tonight, and it was the reason every wolf in that hall expected this to be over quickly. He crossed to the raised dais where Callum Ashgrove's own chair still sat empty, draped in black. He did not take it. He studied instead the report his own scouts had prepared on the ride in. Thin, efficient, already concluded before he'd arrived to read it. Alpha Callum Ashgrove, beloved by the packs he'd hosted at his table, respected in the territorial councils, a wolf other alphas had called honorable. Without hesitation, and dead in his locked chambers, throat opened by claw. His mate. Rejected. Mate, a technicality the report noted almost as an afterthought, since a rejection didn't undo what a bond had already done to a wolf's body, had been the only living creature found in the room with him. The door had been locked from the inside. No scent of a second wolf. No sign of a struggle that reached beyond the two of them. The conclusion had written itself before anyone thought to ask a second question. Beside the dais, Beta Renner stood with the careful stillness of a wolf who had learned to make himself invisible in rooms where blame was being assigned. He had served the Ashgrove pack for longer than Wren had been alive, had signed off on the report without a mark of hesitation, and would not now meet the eyes of the woman he'd helped condemn. Near the healer's tent flap, old Aldrich, the pack's healer, the one who had examined Wren the morning they pulled her from that room, shifted his weight from paw to boot and back, uneasy under the weight of a king's attention he hadn't yet earned. And in the front row, wrapped in mourning furs the color of old blood, sat Matriarch Isolde, Callum's mother. To her, tonight's tribunal was a formality, a stage on which the pack would finally, publicly, finish what her son's death had started. Wren's execution would restore the honor Callum had spent his whole life building in the eyes of the northern packs, never mind what it had cost to build it. Dorian looked up from the report at last and let his gaze settle fully, for the first time, on the woman kneeling in the circle. He knew what a rejected mate was. Every wolf in the territories did. A bond formed and then severed by the very wolf who'd claimed it. A cruelty pack law permitted, even codified, because a mate's consent was never actually required for the bond to be sealed, only for it to be kept. A rejected wolf lost her place in the pack hierarchy the moment the words were spoken. No standing, no voice in council, no family who would take her back once she'd been marked and discarded. Because a rejected mate carried a stain the old wolves still whispered about, as if the wound had been her failing, and not his. She had no one. That was not incidental to tonight's proceedings. It was, Dorian understood with the flat clarity of a man who had judged 1,000 cases exactly like it, the entire reason no one in this pack had asked a second question before condemning her. "Lady Foster," he began, and caught himself, the old formal address from a border pack tribunal, rising out of habit before he corrected it. "Wren of Ashgrove, you stand accused of the murder of your mate, Alpha Callum Ashgrove. Do you understand the charges against you?" She said nothing. Her eyes, when they finally lifted to his, were not empty the way he'd expected a guilty wolf's to be. They were exhausted, watchful, the eyes of someone who had already made peace with a verdict long before it was spoken aloud. "Answer the Alpha King," Renner prompted, his voice clipped and careful, the voice of a wolf, eager for this to be finished. "I understand," Wren said quietly. No plea in it. No fear he recognized as ordinary fear. Just a flat, hollow acceptance, as if she had been rehearsing this exact moment for far longer than 3 nights. Chapter 3. "The court has reviewed the report," Dorian continued, his tone measured, procedural, a formality he had performed 100 times before. "You were found alone with your mate. The door was locked from the inside. No scent of intrusion, no sign another wolf entered that room. You have offered no account of what happened. Do you deny that you killed him?" Wren met his eyes fully for the first time. "No." The word landed in the silence, like a stone dropped into still water. Isolde's mouth curved, faint and satisfied. Renner exhaled, the sound of a wolf confirming something he'd already decided. Aldrich looked away. Dorian's hand moved toward the sealed order resting against his chest, the parchment that would end this before the moon reached its height. One word from him, and it would be finished. That was, after all, why the packs sent for him, because he did not linger in cases that had already answered themselves. But something in him did not move. Perhaps it was the stillness in the way she knelt, no trembling in it, when every other condemned wolf he'd sentenced had shaken like a leaf in wind. Perhaps it was the absence of guilt in her face, replaced by something that looked, disturbingly, like relief. Or perhaps it was simply that his wolf, leashed tight under 11 years of discipline, silent through 1,000 tribunals, had gone suddenly, unnervingly alert the moment she lifted her chin, the way a wolf goes still before it understands. "Why?" "Stand," he said. She hesitated, then rose, slowly, the effort costing her more than her composure let show. As she straightened, the torn collar of her underdress slipped from one shoulder, and the low firelight caught what had been hidden beneath the fabric. The chamber did not gasp so much as it stopped breathing all at once. Across the curve of her neck, half-healed and layered beneath newer bruising, sat a bite mark. A true claiming mark, unmistakable to any wolf's eye, but wrong in every detail that mattered. Older than 3 days, older even than her marriage to Callum, and beneath the visible wound, carried on a thread of scent that no wolf in that circle could have missed once they were close enough to catch it, was a signature that did not belong to the dead Alpha at all. Dorian's hand froze an inch above the execution order. He had scented liars before. He had scented guilt, fear, the particular rot of a wolf who'd done something unforgivable and knew it. He knew, with the flat, unshakable certainty of an Alpha's senses, exactly what each of those smelled like. This was none of them. This was old pain, layered over older pain, and underneath all of it, faint, buried, but unmistakably, his own scentkin. A signature close enough to a bloodline he recognized that his wolf surged against its leash for the first time in years, demanding he look closer, demanding he ask the one question no one in this hall had thought to ask in 3 days of certainty. "Who marked her?" he said, and his voice did not sound entirely like his own. The circle went utterly silent. "This sentencing," Dorian said, lower now, final in a different way than before, "is postponed." Isolde rose to her feet. "Your Grace." "Postponed," he said again, and something in his tone made even Isolde sit back down. Chapter 4. Wren was moved to a guarded den in the healer's quarter. Not a cell, not quite a guest's chamber. Something uncomfortable in between. Dorian sent for a healer from outside the Ashgrove pack, a young wolf named Marin Cole who had earned a reputation for two things in equal measure: brilliance and an unwillingness to soften the truth for anyone's comfort, king or otherwise. "I need an honest reading," Dorian told her, before she'd even set down her satchel. "Not what's convenient, not what protects a dead alpha's name." "I only give the honest kind," Marin said. "It's why I'm not popular at gatherings." "Good." When Marin entered Wren's den and explained what she intended, Wren studied her the way a wolf studies a trap, before deciding whether it's safe to step near it. "You may refuse," Marin said, "at any point." "I want a witness," Wren said, flat, "not a request, in case anyone questions what's found." Dorian stayed by the window, back turned, giving her what privacy the small den allowed, while honoring what she'd asked for. Marin's examination was slow, methodical, spoken aloud as she worked. Bruising in layers, some fresh, most weeks old, older scarring along the ribs that had never healed the way a proper break should, and beneath the collar, the mark itself, examined with a healer's clinical distance that cracked, just slightly, when she reached the base of Wren's neck. "This wasn't given 3 nights ago," Marin said quietly. "This is old, years old, laid under fresher damage. Whoever gave you this mark, it was long before Callum Ashgrove ever claimed you." Wren said nothing. Her breathing stayed controlled, the way a wolf's does, when she's had a great deal of practice not reacting to pain in front of witnesses. Outside, in the corridor, Marin's composure finally broke. "That is not the body of a wolf who fought her alpha in a single desperate night," she told Dorian, voice low and furious. "That is the body of a wolf who has been hurt on a schedule, for years. Could this have come from the struggle that killed him? Absolutely not. And there's something else." Marin hesitated, choosing her words with the care of someone about to say something dangerous. "That mark under her collar. I don't have your senses, Your Grace, but even I can tell it isn't fully faded, the way an old bond usually goes once it's severed. It's like something's been keeping it alive." Dorian spent the following 2 days doing what no one else had bothered to do: investigating the mating, not just the murder. A young den keeper named Isla twisted her sleeve in her hands, refusing to look up. "I heard things sometimes, Your Grace. Crying, some nights. Once I heard something break. Glass, I think. And the next morning Lady Wren had a cut on her hand. Said she'd been careless. Did you believe her?" "No. Wren was never careless. She was careful, like she was afraid of what happened when she wasn't." A senior guard, Beck, confirmed it further. Alpha Callum kept rules for everything in that den. How she spoke at gatherings, who she was permitted to run with during the full moon, when she was allowed to shift at all. If she broke one, he stopped himself. "Finish," Dorian said. He'd confine her, days at a time, sometimes longer, under the excuse she was unwell. We knew what it really was. We just didn't say it out loud. And no one reported this to a tribunal. Beck looked at the ground. "To whom, Your Grace? He was our alpha. She was rejected the day she was claimed. No pack standing of her own. No family who'd take her back. Who was going to believe a rejected mate over him?" That night, searching Callum's locked study, Dorian found a small iron-bound record book hidden beneath a floor panel. Not a diary of ordinary days, but a meticulous account of corrections, dates, infractions, punishments measured out like a ledger of debts owed. "Third moon," W spoke without leave to a visiting wolf, corrected privately. She understands the boundary now. "Sixth moon," W attempted contact with her birth pack without permission. Confined 7 nights. Final entry, 2 nights before his death. W has been attempting to reach the northern court behind my back. This cannot be allowed to stand. If gentle correction no longer suffices, I will use what she fears most to ensure her obedience. The truth of what was done to her, and by whom, will die with her if it must. Dorian's hand did not shake often. It did that night. The final line told him 2 things at once: that Callum had known about the mark under her collar, and that he had planned to silence her, permanently, to keep that truth buried with him. A young she-wolf named Sable arrived at the pack border the next morning, summoned by a message Dorian had sent to every pack Wren had ever run with as a pup. "I haven't seen her in 4 years, Sable said, her voice tight. "Callum forbade it, said I was a bad influence, that I encouraged her to be willful." What did you actually see? Bruises. At a gathering 3 years back. She lied and said she'd fallen during a run. I confronted Callum privately, told him I knew. 2 days later, he told the whole pack I'd made improper advances toward his mate, that I was spreading lies to damage his standing. No one believed me over an alpha. I was banned from the territory. She produced a folded scrap of parchment, worn soft from handling. This reached me half a year later, hidden in a bundle of herbs she sent through a trader. Dorian read it once, then again, jaw tightening with every line. I am sorry for believing what he said of you. I know now he lied. I am afraid, Sable. If something happens to me, know you were the truest packmate I ever had. It was Marin who finally put the last piece where Dorian could see it, 2 days later, comparing notes from the healer's records kept at the border crossing, where Wren had been born. Your Grace, she said carefully, the scent beneath that mark. I cross-referenced it against the birth registry from the Eastern Pack. It isn't a stranger's signature, and it isn't Callum's. She hesitated. It belongs to your father's bloodline, a cousin line mark, given before you ever took the crown, before Callum Ashgrove ever laid a claim over it and buried it beneath his own. Dorian sat with that for a long moment, the ledger still open on the desk before him, Callum's careful, damning handwriting staring back up at him. Someone in his own bloodline had claimed her once, properly, willingly, long before Callum forced a second bond over the first and erased every trace of it from the record. And Callum had known, and buried it, and punished her for years to make certain it stayed buried. Bring me everyone who's testified, Dorian said quietly, and send word to Beta Renner. I want the full account of everything he knew, in writing, by tomorrow evening, or his complicity in this becomes the Pack's business, not his private shame to carry alone. Chapter 5. Dorian came to her den that evening, the ledger tucked under his arm. Marin's findings settled cold in his chest. He found Wren sitting by the low fire, knees drawn up, arms wrapped around herself in a way she hadn't allowed herself during the exam. Smaller now, unguarded, the way a wolf looks when she thinks no one is watching. I know what he did to you, Dorian said quietly. Not just the mark, all of it. The confinements, the years of it. She didn't look at him. So now you've decided I'm a victim, and you'll rewrite the story to fit. I've decided the truth matters more than what's convenient. The truth. Her laugh was hollow, humorless. The truth is Callum Ashgrove was beloved. Honorable. The kind of alpha other packs sent their daughters to learn manners from. And I was the mate who couldn't hold her tongue, couldn't stop breaking his rules, couldn't be what a proper Luna was meant to be. And what do you say? She looked away, jaw tight. I say masks are very convincing when a wolf wears his well enough, long enough. He crouched slowly at the edge of the firelight, bringing himself to her eye level instead of standing over her, deliberate in the way he'd learned, over these last 2 days, that she needed things done. Tell me about the mask. She was quiet a long moment, staring into the flames as if the story belonged to someone else, and she was only reciting it second-hand. He was perfect when he claimed me, attentive, said all the right things in front of the elders. I was young enough, foolish enough, to think that was what a bond was supposed to feel like. Her fingers twisted in the fabric at her knees. The first correction came within a month. I'd run with a visiting wolf without asking his leave first. He didn't raise his voice. He simply explained that a proper mate consulted her alpha before she did anything at all. Then he confined me to the den for 2 days, so I'd understand. After that, it was rules I only learned by breaking them. Don't speak too freely at gatherings. Don't shift without his permission. Don't write to my birth pack without showing him the letter first. Every broken rule came with a lesson, delivered somewhere no one else could hear it. Did anyone know? The pack heard. Packs always hear. But a rejected mate has no standing to complain, and no one wanted to be the wolf who challenged an alpha over how he ran his own den. Her voice hardened, just slightly, anger finally breaking through the exhaustion. I tried to tell my birth pack once. They told me a proper bond required adjustment, that I should be grateful, a wolf of Callum's standing, choosing me. Why didn't you leave? She finally looked at him, and what he saw in her eyes wasn't fear anymore. It was something closer to bone-deep exhaustion, the kind that settles in after years of carrying something alone. Leave and go where, Your Grace? A rejected mate has no pack of her own to return to, no standing in any territory that would take me in over an alpha's word, and he made certain I understood what would happen if I tried, that he'd have me declared unstable before the elders. that a wolf with no pack and no witness has no voice a tribunal will hear over her alphas. The mark, Dorian said carefully. Did he know? Something in her face closed like a door. He knew before he ever claimed me. That was the point of claiming me at all, to bury it, to make sure no one ever asked whose mark came first. Her breath caught, just once. He told me if I ever tried to reach the Northern Court, he'd make certain the truth died with me before it ever reached you. Dorian went very still, the final entry in his ledger. Yes, he came for you that night because he found out you'd tried. He came for me that night, she said, because I'd stopped being useful as a secret and started being a liability instead. She wrapped her arms tighter around herself. None of this changes anything. He's dead. I killed him. And a rejected mate who kills her alpha doesn't get a hearing about why. She gets a circle and a crowd and a quick ending, because that's tidier for everyone who spent years pretending not to notice. It changes everything. No, her voice cracked, finally on the word. It changes nothing for me. His death is a tragedy the Pax will mourn for a season. Mine would just be justice, as far as anyone here is concerned. That is how it works, Your Grace. It has always worked that way. Dorian stood, something hard, and decided, settling into his jaw. Then I will change how it works. For one unguarded moment, something flickered behind her exhaustion. The smallest, most dangerous thing a wolf who has survived what she survived can feel. Hope. She crushed it almost as fast as it rose, the way he imagined she'd learned to crush it 100 times before. Because hope that gets disappointed hurts worse than the thing that killed it in the first place. You cannot save me, she said softly. He paused at the doorway, looking back at her with something fierce settling into his expression. Watch me. He left her by the fire, smaller, alone, but no longer entirely resigned. And Wren, who had not let herself hope for anything in longer than she could remember, felt something small and terrified begin to stir beneath the exhaustion in her chest. Chapter 6. By morning, Dorian had made his decision, not a private ruling, buried in a healer's report and a king's word, but a full tribunal, before the assembled Pax, where the evidence he'd gathered could not be dismissed as one man's mercy. He found Wren by the fire, still awake, as if she hadn't trusted sleep in 3 days. I'm calling a tribunal, he said. Every pack within the Northern Territories will be summoned. The ledger will be read aloud. The healer will testify. Renner will answer for what he buried. He paused. And if you're willing, you'll speak for yourself, in your own voice, before all of them. Fear moved through her first. He watched it cross her face plainly. Then, slower, something steadier settled in behind it. They'll finally have to look at what they spent years refusing to see, she said quietly. Yes, then I'm willing. Chapter 7. 3 nights later, the pack hall stood full for the first time since Callum's death. Every Northern Territory summoned, torches lining the walls, the air thick with the scent of wolves who had come expecting a quick execution and a quicker feast afterward. Wren stood at the center of the circle, unrestrained now, her spine straight. Dorian took the dais. Marin Cole, he called. Speak your findings. Marin stepped forward without flinching under the weight of every eye in the hall. I examined Lady Wren 4 nights past. What I found was not the mark of a single struggle, bruising in layers, weeks and months old, a claiming mark beneath her collar, older than her bond to Callum Ashgrove, one that had been deliberately concealed. Murmurs broke across the hall. In my professional judgment, these injuries could not have come from one night. They came from years. Beck, Isla. One by one, the pack members Dorian had interviewed stepped forward and repeated, before the assembly, what they'd told him privately. The confinements, the silence everyone had agreed to keep. Sable came last, her voice breaking as she held up the worn letter. She wrote to me that she was afraid he'd kill her. I did nothing. I am done doing nothing. Then Dorian lifted the iron-bound ledger. This was kept by Callum Ashgrove in his own hand. He opened to the final page and read the last entry aloud, word for word, the room going silent enough to hear the torches burn. If gentle correction no longer suffices, I will use what she fears most to ensure her obedience. The truth of what was done to her, and by whom, will die with her if it must. The silence afterward had weight to it. Isolde rose, fury cracking her composure. This is a mockery. She killed my son, and now you dress her crime in a stranger's handwriting. It is his hand, Dorian said. verified by 3 wolves who knew it, and it confirms what your son intended to do to her the night she stopped him first. He turned to the assembly, voice hard enough to carry to the back wall. Every wolf in this circle who heard crying through a den wall and called it none of their business shares in what happened here. We chose a mask over the truth beneath it. If we kill her for surviving what we allowed, we are not delivering justice. We are finishing what he started. He looked to Wren. Tell them, in your own words. She walked to the center of the circle, and when she spoke, her voice did not shake. I was claimed young, and for a long time I believed the cruelty was love, wearing an unfamiliar shape. It wasn't. It was control, delivered one rule at a time, until I barely remembered who I'd been before him. Her hands were steady at her sides. He knew about the mark on my neck before he ever claimed me. He claimed me to bury it. And every punishment after was to make certain it stayed buried. 2 nights before he died, he told me plainly, if I ever reached the Northern Court, the truth would die with me. Her voice hardened. That night, he came at me with claws bared, told me a mate who couldn't be obedient would be no mate at all. We fought. I don't remember every moment of it, only that when it ended he was on the ground. And for the first time in years, I was not the one being controlled. She looked out over the silent hall. I did not plan to kill him. I only wanted to survive the night. If that is murder, then survival is a crime, and I am guilty of it gladly. The hall did not erupt so much as it seemed to exhale all at once. Some wolves in open grief, some in shame, a few old enough to remember exactly what they'd chosen not to hear over the years. Dorian let the silence hold a long moment before he spoke again. I rule that Wren of Ashgrove acted to defend her own life against a mate who had planned, in his own hand, to end it. All charges of murder are dismissed. She is no longer rejected, no longer without standing in this territory, or any other, under my rule. He paused, and something in his voice shifted, quieter now, meant only for her, though the whole hall heard it. And the mark on her neck will be answered honestly, in time, starting with the truth of whose bloodline it belongs to, and why it was hidden from her at all. He struck his palm once against the dais, final, absolute, and the tribunal was done. Chapter 8. Wren did not feel free that first night. Freedom, after years of vigilance, felt like a weight lifted from a body that had forgotten how to stand without it. Dorian gave her his own territory to heal in, smaller than the Ashgrove lands, quieter, a den with no locked doors and no rules but the ones she chose herself. He visited daily, never staying longer than she wanted, never entering without invitation, never touching her without asking first. Slowly, he was teaching her something Callum had spent years trying to erase, that a mate's hands did not have to mean danger. Weeks passed. He taught her to run freely under the full moon again, something forbidden to her for years. He brought her the healer's full account of the mark, a cousin-line bond, given to her as a pup by a wolf of Dorian's own bloodline, before Callum's family arranged the match that buried it. A truth neither of them had chosen, and both now had to reckon with honestly, at their own pace, without pretending the past hadn't happened. One evening on the den's threshold, watching the moon rise over unfamiliar woods, Wren stepped closer to him without being asked. I want to know what it feels like, she said quietly, to choose this, not because I was claimed, because I want to. Then choose it, Dorian said, slowly, if that's what you need. I'm not going anywhere. She kissed him first, soft, careful, entirely on her own terms. When she pulled back, wonder had replaced the wariness in her eyes. That didn't hurt. It never should have, he said. Not once, not from anyone. Months later, in a small ceremony attended only by those who had fought for her, Marin, Sable, Beck, Isla, Wren stood before the assembled few and chose, this time with her voice and not her silence, to bond herself to Dorian properly, not a claiming taken from her, a mark given freely, by her own choice, in front of witnesses who had earned the right to see it. Isolde was not invited, neither was the birth pack that had once told her to be grateful. Any regrets? Dorian asked her that night, his arms around her as the fire burned low. None, Wren said. The pain shaped me into someone who could finally recognize what real devotion looks like when it stood in front of me. I survived him. Now I get to live beyond him, on my own terms, with a mark I chose myself. Dorian Vane had come to Ashgrove territory to sentence a wolf for murder. Instead, he'd given her something no tribunal had ever offered a rejected mate before, the truth spoken aloud, a bond chosen instead of taken, and the certainty that she had always been worth fighting for. And Wren, once rejected, once condemned, once silenced by a mark she never asked for, had chosen, finally and completely, to build a life beside the one wolf who looked past every lie and saw her exactly as she was. If this story resonated with you, let me know which moment hit hardest, the bite mark reveal, the tribunal, or the bond she chose for herself, in the comments below. See you in the next story.